Okay, hey everyone, I'm going to show you guys how to draw from a photo accurately with correct angles and with siding angles to draw this cube. We're also going to go over how to draw a cylinder and kind of break up the space into 4 grids so it's easier for us to understand the proportions and placement of all the shapes inside of this picture plane or composition. So, the first thing is we have this horizon line that's already here for us in the example photo. So you're going to make sure to draw in a horizon line that's about 3/4 of the way. It's not exactly halfway, it's just above halfway. And you're going to draw that in your example where your like blank square is. So draw a horizon line. And actually, I think I drew mine too high. I'm going to redraw that a little lower. Maybe right here. Okay. So next, we're going to draw a line that goes straight down the middle and about halfway. So I'd say halfway is just to the left of the center of this cube. So I drew a line about halfway. So again, these should be equal. I think this is slightly cut off. I can draw a line in here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line in the center of this now. And you should be drawing this line pretty light because you want to be able to erase everything. So there's not a lot of overlapping lines. So now we have 4 quadrants, which are going to help us kind of understand where everything is. So like, for example, this cylinder, the top of it is filling up the majority of the space within this quadrant. The right face of this sphere is in the bottom right quadrant. Sorry, I meant to say top left. And then the left face of this cube is in the bottom left. So it kind of just helps you see things in that way. So what we're going to do first is draw the cylinder, which is going to be we're starting off with a rectangle to kind of get the size and proportion correct. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. And notice how I have this gap that should roughly be the same size as this gap right here. So I'm going to redraw it a little bit more to the left. And draw this one. Okay, so we have this square, and again, there should be this gap that looks roughly the same size as the one in the photo. Okay, so I'm going to continue to extend this square downward, and notice how it goes now about an inch or so down. So I'm going to continue to extend this down like this. And then I'm going to close it off. Okay, so I have my square. And again, these grids, these really big grids, help me understand if everything is in the correct area. So I'm noticing that like maybe the gap on this side is a little bigger, so I might then make this square a little thinner. Okay, so I think that's good. So now to create a cylinder, what you're going to do is you're going to keep the same sides, but you're going to create something called an ellipse at the top, which is a circle that's squished down and put into perspective. So the sides the middle of an ellipse always kind of slightly bulges out, and then the sides kind of taper in and get thinner, but the ellipse should be within these two lines, within the width of the square or rectangle that you're drawing. So I'm drawing this, and again, make sure everything's looking even. And then the bottom of a cylinder should never be flat. So if you have a flat bottom on the cylinder, you need to make sure that you add another ellipse down here. That's the same exact angle and size as the one up front, but this time you don't see the inside. So you can actually go ahead and erase everything that would be behind, or like, because again, this isn't glass, so you would actually see the bottom of this ellipse. So you can keep erasing and redrawing. Now we have a cylinder. And I would probably go over and clean up some of these lines if I had a lot of time. But I think for now that's fine. I noticed I probably could have drawn this a little straighter. But now we have our cylinder drawn. So we're going to add in our cube, which we're going to use the sighting angle technique for. So you're going to have a ruler, and you're going to start by drawing the vertical center line of this cube. And notice that the center line is just slightly off. Well, the center line for our picture plane is just slightly to the left of our line right here. So we're going to draw this just to the right. I'm going to draw a line like this. And again, this corner shouldn't be too high or too low because there's space on the top and bottom. So maybe I'll make this a little shorter. So here's this part. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start using my sighting angles. So what you do is you take a ruler, or you can do a pencil, but it's easier to trace the lines back with the ruler. And you line it up to the corner or the line that you're trying to draw, and you match it. So I'm going to extend this into my cylinder because that's what it's doing in the photo, and do that to the bottom one. And then what you want to do is you want to take your pencil and you're going to line it up to the angles just to double check that it's accurate. That one looks accurate. That one looks accurate. Another tip is that most of the time, these two lines will almost be parallel with each other. So they're the same angle almost. So you can also think of it in that way where if you already have this line, you can kind of estimate the angle by freehand drawing it to match. And then you close it off with a vertical line. So there's one side. Now we're going to do the other side. So line up your ruler or your pencil, match the angle, and then you check your angle. It's always about checking. You should be checking back and forth multiple times. If you drew it wrong, you can always just redraw it, erase it, and redraw it. And then either remeasure it, or again, you can just take the angle and do it like this. And then you can check it. Okay, that looks right. And then you close it off. And just be conscious about the width that you're drawing everything. So I actually think that I can make it a little wider. Just barely. Like this. So now I have this side. So again, it looks like a open book or a wall. Then to do the back angles, take your ruler, you line it up to the edge you're trying to draw. And then you trace back. And notice how this corner almost ends at the halfway point. So I'm making sure that this angle is going to end pretty close. And then get this one. And maybe it's a little off, but I think it's pretty accurate to this one. So if you are really bothered by it being like a few centimeters off, you can always redraw it. Like if I wanted to make this corner line up closer to the center line, I could draw this line longer, but then I would have to make my cube also a little bit wider. But I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. And let me just double check my angle. Oh. Actually, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now I have my cube drawn. I'm gonna look at it. When I'm looking at it, I'm actually gonna make this a little taller just because I feel like my cube's a little too short. So again, adding height onto stuff once you already have the angles down is really easy because you're just matching the angles and extending the height. And then okay. I'm gonna be happier with that. Okay, so there's my cube, my cylinder. I can, again, look back and forth if I'm unhappy with anything. And you can make adjustments along the way. I think maybe the ellipse is a little bigger. Okay. And now you're gonna draw in your circle or your sphere. And I'm actually noticing that I'm gonna make my cylinder just slightly wider because I want there to be a gap. So there's this gap between the cylinder and the sphere. So I think my cylinder was too slim. So again, just adjusting the angle. Redrawing. Okay. I can start to erase the inside. And like I said, you guys want to be drawing light because I'm drawing darkly so you can see what I'm doing, but things come out a lot neater when you draw lightly. So it's easy to erase. Okay. So now I have my cylinder. And I'm going to draw in my sphere now. So spheres can be hard to freehand draw, but just try your best. Do a light sketch. And notice how the bottom of this sphere ends almost at the end of the cube. So I'm going to make a note that my sphere should end somewhere right there. And it overlaps my shape, my cube. I'm going to draw lightly at first and then start to carve it, or start to really darken my lines once I get a solid outline of a sphere. And then Okay, and I will maybe make this bottom a little shorter. Okay, I would keep going and really adjusting this, but I think this is a good size. I just need to go back and really make sure that it's really round and even. But once you have a solid sketch, and you would look at this and look at the photo and see if you need to make any adjustments. I think the only adjustment I need to make is just making my circle a tiny bit smaller, but you want to make sure that you're really using those siding angles to get the accurate proportions for your cube. And then that everything is relatively in proportion to this photo. So like I said, the cylinder should almost be at the very top of this upper left quadrant, and it should fill up almost the whole space of this quadrant. The right side of the right face of the cube should be in the bottom right quadrant. The left face should be in the bottom left quadrant, and so on and so forth. So everything should kind of line up and make sense. So make sure when you're drawing this, your cylinder isn't this tiny, skinny little form, because again, that will make it look unproportional, or your sphere is really small, or if your cube is looking more like a rectangle, then that means it needs to be wider. So that is the worksheet. And then when you're ready, once you have a solid sketch, you're going to take your graphite pencils and use your value scale to shade in the accurate value. So like this is your core shadow, so you might use a 4B. Your cast shadow will probably be a 6B. Your midtones, like these grays, will maybe be in 2B or an HB. These highlights will be super light, so you might not even use value. You might just blend things inward to get that light value. So you guys will be working on this for the rest of class. You do not have to submit this to Canvas, but you need to keep these because tomorrow when we build our still lives, you need to show me this finished worksheet so I understand you know how to sketch a photo in proportion and add value with accurate values. So that's your goal for the end of class, and then tomorrow we will be starting our final project.